I stand before you to share ideas and to try to provoke your thoughts and engage in some cerebral gymnastics, something like that. By the year 3000 BC, right up to 2000 BC, civilization was basically around the Egyptian area, the Nile Valley, Mesopotamia, and all such places, the Indus Valley in India. And in fact, it was traced that humanity, or the oldest corpse of mankind, was found in the Olduvai Gorge in the Nile Valley in Uganda, stroke Tanzania. So you ask yourself, if truly civilization around 3500 BC, it was somewhere in Africa with Egyptian hieroglyphics and all that, why are we still where we are? At that time, we thought that the world belonged to us because just next door here in Yemen, there was the Queen of Sheba. I'm sure you know Yemen, that is in crisis today. There was a few of the most beautiful women from Nefertiti, Cleopatra, Queen of Sheba. And men were coming from all over the world to come and... So, at what point did Africa lose its premier status? Well, of course, at some point, some discoveries allowed the Western world to take over. By some stroke of hard work, some stroke of ingenuity, they discovered industrialization. They now knew what to do with iron ore to smelt into making iron. They knew what to do to produce gold, jewelry from all of that ore that you pick from the ground. They knew what to do. And the moment you know it yourself, the moment you can smelt iron into metals, you can make a gun, you can make a sword, you can conquer tribes. So for us in Africa, while the Western world was busy using the irons to make industries, we were converting the metals to implements of war. Chaka the Zulu, Mansa Musa, etc. were busy conquering territories and collecting their cows and women, of course. So we lost it. The rest of the world now went ahead, produced materials that were used to conquer us. The Spanish and the Portuguese created ships that will come from Spain and Portugal to come and raid Africa for slaves. Meanwhile, we also now knew how to use these metals, used them to fight Ijaye War, Kurumi War, all the conquests, instead of producing materials like Olaoluwa said. So, here we are. The next question now comes. What happens? Why did we have a deficit of creativity? The same God that gave us brains gave them brains. If you cut my skin, you'll find red blood. If you cut their own skin, you'll find red blood. So where did we go wrong? Now, there's a school of thought that believes that the environment fostered a fine environment where industrial revolution took place. And in Africa, while we were busy fighting ourselves, they were going on. They now came to Africa to come and raid us to get our cocoa, to make chocolates, and return the chocolates to us to buy. They make our cotton, and even China now produces cotton and sells us a tampa that is cheaper than the one we make here. So you ask yourself, what is wrong with us? Some school of thought has said, they've said it several times, that maybe, as white supremacists say, the black man has a lesser brain. But we contest that because we know that there are professors in America that are from Nigeria. Jelani Aliu left this place. Dogondaji and went to General Motors and produced Chevrolet. Chimamanda left Nsukka to go and write some of the best books that even Michelle Obama and a host of other first ladies have read and applauded. So what's the problem? Now, of course, you know that even Wole Soyinka was a brilliant student. It took him to go to University of Leeds in England to become a Nobel Prize winner. Even Fela had to leave his place in Lagos and Abeokuta to go to study in England and rediscovered his musical prowess. So, is it that the environment there is better and more creativity friendly than Nigeria? Is that the issue? If that is the issue, then why can't we reproduce that here? Now, the big question is, there are places like South Africa that have close to what they have in Europe, and yet we beat them in football. Our Ogbunike in Igbo land produce things during the war that are more than what they have there. So, is necessity the mother of invention? If it is, why hasn't necessity make us invent things? If we had stayed the way, remember, once upon a time, everybody who goes to Mecca or Jerusalem will realize that the whole of Israel and Jerusalem is Negev desert. Everybody who goes to Saudi Arabia knows that the Saudi Arabian desert is desert. If at that time, the words of the prophets at that time could produce what we still read today, and they make sense more than some of the things that we in this beautiful environment and cozy halls now, we cannot even think about some of the things we read in any of those books, either the Bible or the Quran. Very profound things they said at that time, despite the fact that there was no AC during the days of Jesus Christ. There was no AC during the days of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, where does necessity and environment meet? My speech is centered around a topic I said is creativity and humanity. At what point does creativity become a product of necessity? So you ask yourself, if Isaac Newton had not discovered the law of gravity, if Michael Faraday had not discovered electricity, if James Watt had not discovered railway, if Graham Bell had not discovered telephone, where would we be in Africa? Still tying some leaves? And what would we be doing? And if that is the case, why, after getting all these beautiful things about robotics and all those things, why haven't we moved to the level of Mark Zuckerberg? Why, you ask yourself, was there any force that was making Mark Zuckerberg? If Mark Zuckerberg had been born in Gudurega or Godebawa, would he have become Mark Zuckerberg? If Bill Gates had been born in Uzuakoli or Aaron Dizogu, would he have become Bill Gates? The president of America in the year 1949, Harry Truman, said that half of the people in the third world were suffering from poverty and disease. And poverty and disease, and indeed the kind of poverty that was a threat to humanity on a whole, because that poverty, which he predicted, has resulted in ISIS, Boko Haram, and other forms of, in fact, the smuggling of cocaine, El Chapo. People are looking for money because a lot of young kids want to jump on a boat and cross the Mediterranean to go and look for greener pastures. What Harry Truman predicted in his inaugural speech as American president in 1949. That poverty he talked about, and the UN created a Marshall Plan. That Marshall Plan still hasn't worked because the spirit of us Africans and Nigerians and the rest of the world have not accepted the desire. There's no hunger, there's no desire. And so the quality of leadership cannot lead us to that promised land. If you take a horse to the river, you cannot force it to drink. So provide all the computers, provide all the laptops, And if we're lazy, we're lazy. So what makes us that set of people that do not want to overtake the world? Meanwhile, remember that once upon a time, the Greco-Roman civilization was on top of the world. At one point, it now became the European world that was in charge. America came, took over. Today, America is losing space to China. And in fact, as at the time, as at 1960, we in Sokoto, the last speaker talked about the telephones, those black telephones. Our house in Sokoto here, my telephone was 2438, that black one. It rang only, in fact, the DO had a record of all the phone calls because P&T will take all the records of the phone calls you made. So in fact, at 3:30, you stop making phone calls because any phone calls that are not official, you'll be charged. That's the kind of setting we had. So what happened? By that time, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, all of them didn't have anything like Nigeria had. Today, where we are today is far behind Singapore, far behind Malaysia. In fact, to put it mildly, as at 1985, I went to Dubai, and Dubai was just one piece of land. As 1985, I was on grade level 12 in NTA, and we went to Dubai, and Dubai was just a piece of land. Today, now you understand the problem. Now you can see why we have a challenge. Where do we start tackling that challenge? How do we arrive at presidents or ministers? Or I was Commissioner of Information some 3-4 years ago, and all the directors in my ministry could not use the laptop or computer. And I bought the laptops and gave to them, and they donated it to their children. So where do you start from? So there is no desire. There's no passion. Our ideals are different. We don't see these things as necessary. We think that, oh, it's nice. Just go and manufacture them and bring them. We'll consume. We have money. We'll buy them. So an average guy gets money. He doesn't invest in a laptop. He doesn't develop software. He doesn't go for additional courses. He doesn't go for refresher courses anywhere. He just sits back, okay, what do I do? I'll add one more wife, open a store somewhere, and then let's celebrate and get a new car. Status symbols. How do we reinvent the whole of Nigeria and Africa to avoid what we have been doing? I'm sure you heard of a president that resigned a couple of days ago, did Rolls Royce and all the things he has assembled. It's amazing, isn't it, that somebody wants to acquire all those things and go away. You've heard of ministers in African countries that have everything, stock everywhere, and yet there is poverty on the street. That poverty that Harry Truman talked about in 1949, that could be dangerous to all of us, is still going to haunt us if we don't do something now. What do? We need to begin to re-educate ourselves. We need to begin to get skilled workforce. A lot of all these countries train people at OND level to be able to get their skills. Now government is providing loans, but half of those loans are not going in the right direction. Some of the things that are being done with those loans are not producing the kind of results. You go and open a fisheries pond now, you don't have enough skills, you don't train, then somebody comes and demarket it and say, oh, that fish you're doing, it has too much cholesterol, so people stop buying. Next minute, you have borrowed 10 million naira to set up a poultry, and the poultry, they just say, oh, there's bird flu. Nigeria, before you know it, all your birds are. So, how do we get this country back on track? We must look for the quality people, and that's why I came here today to encourage all the young people to begin to see themselves as leaders. We're tired of 93-year-old presidents of Zimbabwe and others. There are others there. There is one of Cameroon, there's the one, they're all over the place. And the truth is that everything you're talking about, Silicon Valley, you're talking about robots, they don't care about all those things. They don't care. Nobody bothers. So we need to take over leadership of this country. I'm a little too old for that now, but I challenge you guys and I believe you can do it. We must get a structure back. We must get proper functional education that can produce skills. We must get people interested in going to school. There's no excuse that we have 10 million children out of school. There's none. No excuse. There's no excuse. In fact, it shouldn't even be talked about. Somebody should legislate and enforce. But the day you start enforcing, somebody will say, oh, you've just arrested my junior sister's mother's wife's son. And so the matter continues. And unless we take them off the streets, one day there will be a crazy, I don't want to say revolution, crisis that will produce more riffraffs that will begin to look at you and I that can wear wristwatches and say, give me that wristwatch. What happened? Why? How did you arrive at kidnapping? Yes. People just think you have money. You don't know what to do it when they are suffering. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening, and I do hope I've made you to think further. This discussion cannot end here. My whole intention is to make you continue the discussion after this session, because it's a continuous discussion until we get to the promised land. Thank you very much.